Hey everyone, and welcome back to my channel. This is Nikushi, and today we're gonna do the next part of the Python tutorials. So let us go into it. So list operators. The item in a certain index in a list can be reassigned the value. Now here, for example, we have this list which has all the values to be set. Now we're changing the value of the number index at 2, which is this, and we are changing the value to 5. Now what happens in this case is that it's going to print out 77577. It's no more going to print the second value as 7. This is going to change to 5. Now you can replace an item with different types of indexes, like you can have strings in here, you can have any other thing, like any data type works. Like if you have like a float or a double digit float or anything as such, you can just have them. Now let's see the next one. Now what is the value of this? Now number 3 is 4, like number it indexed 3, and number 1, which is 2. We are equating their values, which means number 4's value will become 2. So this is how it's going to work. Now list can be added and multiplied as well. Now here what happens is the list consists of 1, 2, 3, and we are adding 4, 5, and 6 to the list. So when later on we print it, it's going to print all the numbers to 1 to 6. Now list and strings are similar in many ways. Strings can be thought of list as characters, and that can't be changed. For example, the string hello can be a list, and the first character would be hello, the second is E, and goes on. Now here we have to reassign the second element and print the whole list. So we're going to end this up. Second element is, this is 1 and this is 2. So we're going to have the first instead, and we're going to print nums. Now to check if an item is in the list, the in operator can be used. If it returns true, then the item occurs more than once in the list, and if false, then it doesn't. Now let us say that we have a string list, let's say to be hello. Now here we can have a thing like n in hello. Let's say it to be x, the list name. Now all the words all the letters which is H, E, E, L, O will be considered as different. Now, as n is not present in the list, it's going to return a false. But if it would be a H, so it would return a true because there is a H in the word. And if it would be an L, it would be true because there are two L's, it doesn't matter. You can also do that with words and it doesn't have any issues with it. Now here it's actually given with words, which is spam, eggs, spam, and sausages. They said tomato in words, which is a false because there is no such word as tomato. Now the next one, this is a little complicated one, but it's easy. Now this is a list given to us, which is 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5. And they are equating the number 0, number indexed at 0, which is 10, to the value of number indexed at 1 minus 5, which is they are making the value of the one indexed at 0, which should be equal to 9, which is the first value, and it is subtracted by 5. Thus, we get a value of 4. And now it's asking us to check that if 4 is in the list. Now, it is a yes because the value has changed of 10 to 4. So, we are going to print the third element of the list, which is 7. Because it's 0, 1, 2, and 3. So, it's going to be 7. If 4 would not be present in the list, then we would have printed the fourth one, which is 6. Now to check if an item is not in the list, we can use not operator, which is as same as the other one. Now, there are two ways to use it, which is not 4 in nums and 4 not in nums. Most preferred usage is for, not in nums, because it makes a sentence altogether. Now this is a very clear one. So the first and the second one is a false. I'm sorry, is a true because it is not present in the list. But the third and the fourth one are true because, I'm sorry, are false because they are there in the list. Now here, fill the blanks to print yes if the list contains it. Now it's clearly given to us that we should use the if. So the first one is going to be if. And if Z, we have to check that it contains. So we have to have if Z in letters. Let's go to the next topic. Now, list functions. The append method adds an item to the end of the existing list. Now what it does is, now here the value of the list is 1, 2, and 3. But what it does is nums.append 4. Now what it does in the end, which is after 3, it adds 4. You can also change them, but there is another method for it. So it's going to be print nums, and it's going to print 1, 2, 3, and 4. Let's go to the next one. Now the dot before the append is because it is a method and that cannot be skipped. Now, what is the result of the code? Words hello, and it's adding word to it. So it's going to print words hello. So it should be a hello because it is the first one, or it should be a word because it starts with 0. I'm sorry. Now, to get the function, to get the number of items in a list, you can use the len. Len stands for length. So here the length of it would be 5 because it has having 5 items in total. Now here when counting the length, we do not start the count with 0. So here is the whole thing. Now len is written before the list. It is called on without a dot. Now here len letters, it's going to print 4 because the length is 4. Now the insert method is similar to the append method, but you can just say the position of it. Now here, words.python and fun, there are 2 strings in it. Index is 1 and word.insert index, which means it will index this particular word is at the position 1 because index is already defined. So it's going to be Python is fun. That's how it works. Let's see the next one. Now elements that are after the inserted item are shifted to the next one. So here, as we can see, fun is having the second value. It will be shifted to the third value, which is the number 2. Now number 98765. Nums.append 4. Nums.insert 2 11. So the second one is going to be 11 and it's going to insert 4, which means it will have a total of, it's going to have a total of 7 values. Yes, because 2 is the position and 11 is the number which is going to be added. Now the index method finds the first occurrence of a list item and returns its index. If the item isn't in the list, it raises a value error. Now for example, let's just solve this as by self. So it's P, Q, R, S, P, U. Now let us index R. R would be a 2 because it is at the third position. P would be a 0 and a 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's going to be 0, 4, and Z would be a value error because Z is not present in the list. Now there are a few other things like max list returns the maximum value, minimum list returns the minimum value, list count represents the number, returns the count how many times a particular thing has been occurred in the list. A list removes an object, and reverses the items in a list. Now, for example, you can count how many 42s are there in the list using the item count 40, where item is the name of our list. Now, drag and drop the options below to add a Z to the end of the list and print the list's length. So the first one will be append, because it's clearly mentioned that we have to add it to the end. So it's going to be len list. We've completed the lesson. Let's go to the next topic. Now, while loop. A while loop is used to repeat a block of code multiple times. Now, what happens here is you declare a value of I. Now, let's say it is 2. Now, until the value of I changes to 2, the execution of that block of code goes on. So this is how the while loop works. Now, as we can see, for example, let's say we need a process to multiple user inputs, so that each time we use the user inputs something, the same block of code needs to be executed. Now, below the while loop that counts up from 1 to 5, which point the loop terminates. Terminate means breakdown. Now, the value of I starts with 1 and it ends below 5. Now, while I is less than or equal to 5, so it should not exceed 5, it's going to print I. Now, what happens here is it's going to print 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and at the 5, it's going to print finished. Now, during each loop iteration, the variable I will get incremented by 1 until it reaches 5 as per the code. So the loop will execute the print statement 5 times. Now I is equal to 3. While I is more than 3, we're going to print I. Now I is equal to I minus 1. How many numbers does it? Does. So once it's going to minus, it's going to be 2. Another time it's going to be 1. And another time it's going to be 3. So let's go for 3. Okay. So it can be greater than or equal to, right? Okay, so let's see. I is equal to I minus 1, which is 3 minus 1, which is 2. 3 minus 1, which is 1. I'm sorry, 2 minus 1, which is 1. And 1 minus 1, which is 0. So it should be actually 3 times, but it's equal to 2 times. Now, how many numbers does this code print? Now, let us just look at this. According to me, the answer should be 4, just because 3 is also going to be printed. So actually, it is going to first print I, which sentence we missed out. So the answer is going to be 4. And you can use these multiple statements in a while loop. Now, for example, if the if statement, this can be useful if you're making a game. You need to loop through the number of players, actions, and add and remove the points of the players. Now, the code below uses an if and else statement inside a while loop to separate the even and odd numbers in the range of 0 to 10. strx is used to convert the x to a string so that it can be used for concatenation. Now, play the values to create a loop that increments the value of x by 2 and prints the even values. So while x is, we have this colon and it's going to print x. Next one, to end the while loop prematurely, the break statement can be used. For example, we can break an infinite loop if some condition is met. Now, when does this happen? The while true is a short and easy way to make an infinite loop. Now, an example for use of case. Now, using the break statement outside the loop causes an error, so it should be used inside the loop itself. Let's go to the next one. Now, I is equal to 5, and while true, it should print I, and the I value is going to be decreased by 2. If the value of I is going to be lesser than 2, then it's going to break the whole thing. So here it's going to print 4 numbers. Big is going to print, okay, let's three numbers is, yeah, it's because it's going to print 5 and it's going to print 4 and 3. It's not going to print 2 because it says that if it is less than 2, it's going to break the whole thing. Now another statement that can be used within the loops is continue. Unlike break, continue jumps back to the top of the code rather than stopping it. Basically, the continue statement stops the current iteration and continues with the next one. Now it's just checking the next one. Now, an example of case of continue. So using the continue statement outside the loop again causes an error. Now, I is equal to 0, while I is less than 5, I should be increased with an value of 1. If I is equal to 3, it's going to skip it, and then it's going to be continuing the next one, which is going to be having the 4th value, which is 4. Now, which statement ends the current iteration and continues the next one? So it is continue. Let's go to the next one. Lower structures. So the for loop. The for loop is a very important concept. The for loop is used to iterate over a given scene, such as lists or strings. The code below outputs a list and adds the exclamation mark at the end. So the words are hello, world, spam, and eggs. So for word in words, which means it's for every word in the list words, it's going to print an exclamation mark with it. So it's going to print hello with an exclamation mark, world with an exclamation mark, and so on. Now, fill in the blanks to create a valid for loop. Now, as you've seen here, this is how a for loop works. So it's going to be for L in letters, and we're going to have a colon. Now, the for loop can be used to iterate over strings as well, as we have seen in the example. Testing the for loops, count is 0, it should start with a 0. And for x in string, now, if x is equal to t, which means if it is equal to this value or this value, it is going to increase the count by 1. Now, it's going to print the count. So, list. There's a list of 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. For x in the list, which is, so if x divided by 2 is equal to 1. So, for example, if x is 2 and 2 divided by 2 is 1. So, in that sense, and x is greater than 4, which means 5, 6, 7, it's going to print x. So, what is the output of the code? Now, it's actually not going to work out. So here guys, actually we are making a mistake because this is a modulo, not a divided by. So x modulo 2 should be 1, which is 5 divided by 2 gives a remainder of 1, and it is having a value of more than 4. So it should actually be a 5. So let's try with it. Now, the for and while loops can be used to execute a block of code multiple times. It's common for the for and for loop when the number of iterations is fixed. For example, iteration over a fixed list of items of a shopping list. The while loop is used in cases when the number of iterations is not known and depends on some calculations conditions in the code block. Now, which constructs can be used to iterate through a list? Loops. So here we are done. Now we're going to move to the last concept. Just a second. The last concept is a range. Now, the range function returns a sequence of numbers by default. It starts from 0 and increments by 1 and stops before the specified numbers. Now, for example, you've given the range of 10. Now, it's going to print all the numbers from 0 to 9 and it's going to stop before it. Like, it's going to stop at 9. It's not going to print out 10. So here it is the same one with 10. In order to output a range as a list, we need to explicitly convert it to a list. Now it is a list range 5 and print number 4. So it's going to be 0, 1, 2, 3 and 4. So it's going to be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. It's supposed to be a 4. Now, if range is called with one argument, it produces another object with a value of 0 to that argument. If it is called with two arguments, it proceeds the value for the first to the second. So here is an example. Remember that the second argument is not included in the range. So 3 is to 3, 8 will not include 8. Now what it happens is in this one, all the numbers from 3 to 7 are included. 8 is not included and the numbers preceding or succeeding it are not included. Now what is the result of the code? So it's going to be a 5, 6, 7, which is a 3 because 8 is not included. Now range can have a third argument which determines the interval of the sequence produced. Now that's the difference. We can also create it for decreasing numbers. So here what happens is it is the difference between each number. Now for example, we have 5. So it's going to add 2, which is 7, and 7 would be the next number printed. And the last number would be 19 as 20 is not included any which ways. Now let's change 3, 5, 15 and 3. It's going to print the second number, which is 3 with difference 6, 9 and it's going to be 9. Now, the for loop is commonly used to repeat some code or a certain number of times. This is done by combining for loops with the range of objects. So for I in the range 5, print hello. So if it's having 4, it means you don't need to call list on the range object when it's used for a for loop because it isn't indexed, so it is not required. Now, it's going to be a for I in range. So it has to print only the even value, as I said. So it's going to be difference 2 and it's going to print I. Okay, so yeah guys, that's all for today's video. If you like the video, just like, share, subscribe, comment down below and press the notification bell. Thank you.